Hi, my name's Kenny Baum. Walking my friend Carl Nunn to Heaven's Gate was quite a journey. Carl was my guitar mentor. We met by chance, so I thought, some 14 years ago. A guy named Roger that I barely knew invited me to a guitar jam at his house. He said he and some other friends get together every week and play guitar. I told him I only knew a handful of chords. He said, "That's all right, come on over." When I went to the jam the next week, Roger introduced me to Carl and Bobby. Said these are the guys I was telling you about. We all shook hands, and I asked Carl and Bobby how long they'd been playing guitar with Roger. Carl said this was only his second time. Bobby said this is my first time. Roger excused himself to go make some coffee, since he was obviously embarrassed for stretching the truth that everyone was coming to an established jam. We all laughed about it and learned over the next few weeks that Carl was really the only one that could play guitar, that I, Bobby, and Carl were all truck drivers, and Roger, well, he was a flake. So we all struck out on our own, the three amigos, Carl, Bobby, and me. Over the next 10 years, we rarely missed a Sunday night jam together. Then Carl found out that he had colon cancer. After several rounds of treatment, 11 surgeries, and many hospital stays later, we knew that Carl wasn't going to beat this. I remember getting the call from the cancer center in Oklahoma after one of Carl's surgeries, that things weren't going well and that he may not make it. I got off the phone and I cried like a baby. I was so overwhelmed with emotions, questions, and fear, wondering how could I handle this. Carl had become one of my closest friends, and I didn't want to lose him. Carl made it through that surgery, and many others, but I knew from that time on I had to mourn early and quietly. I had to be strong for him and accept what was going to happen. I couldn't change the outcome, but I could change the circumstances. Carl suffered with depression before his cancer, and it only got worse for him with the cancer. Even though I had not experienced depression, I could see what it was doing to Carl. He felt alone and would lose his drive and motivation for life. Every time I would go see Carl at home or in the hospital, the visit would start off slow and heavy and end up light and fun. Our visit would start with Carl barely responding and end up with him sitting up and trying to play my guitar. I saw how much me being there mattered to him. I'm glad I didn't just run in and see how bad he was doing and leave after the slow and heavy part of the visit. It took time to make him feel better and to laugh. And he would always ask, "Kenny, can you come see me tomorrow?" He just wanted me to be there. Carl didn't want me to feel sorry for him or to tell him that he was doing better than he really was. He didn't want me to tell him to do exactly what the doctor said. Carl was dying, and he wanted me to be his friend and to help him do the things that he loved for as long as he was able to do them. So when I came to see him, I didn't bring him flowers and a card. I brought a guitar and a cheeseburger. He was fed through a port in his shoulder and wasn't supposed to eat anything by mouth. But if you saw his eyes when he was eating that cheeseburger, you would understand why I brought them. Carl loved the music and the sermons here at Rockbrook, so when he got too weak to sit in a chair, we brought in a cot that he could lay on. Every week that Carl wasn't in the hospital, he was here at church, in the back, laying on a cot. It would wipe him out for the rest of the day, but he wanted to be here. Carl looked to me for advice on several things, from yes or no on the next surgery, to how his hair looked. Funny how vanity sticks with you. But most of all, he wanted to know that I would be there when he needed me. He needed me to laugh when he couldn't, and he needed me to cry when he wasn't looking. He needed me to be strong and steadfast, something he could count on because everything else was changing. I prayed openly with Carl every time I saw him, and he always valued that. Some of my fondest memories are the prayer times that we had together. Carl told me several times how important our friendship was to him. There were times that I could tell that he wanted to talk about more than just how he was feeling physically or what the weather was like outside. He looked like he was a million miles away, staring at nothing, but thinking of everything all at once. I knew in these times he didn't want to be entertained. He had real issues on his mind. It was in these times that I learned what a dying man thinks about. I would sit quietly with him, not across the room, but right beside him. Wait for some time to pass, and then ask, "Carl, what are you thinking about today?" At times it was words of wisdom he spoke, and other times questions and wonderment. Once he even tried to sell me a covered wagon. That was a high morphine day. The hospital bed he was in had a zip-up cover all the way around it to keep him from getting up on his own, and it looked like a covered wagon. He assured me that the wagon was in fine working order and that I could make payments on it if I was short on cash. You know, Carl was always a cowboy at heart. The point is, I had to recognize the times when he needed to talk and I needed to listen, no matter how serious or how silly. Carl was my friend, but he was also a husband, father, brother, and a grandpa. He had a family that was hurting too, and I knew that no matter how close I was to Carl, I couldn't lose sight that I was only a friend. I didn't interfere with any of the family decisions, and I always tried to be helpful to the family. There were even times that I had to talk frankly to Carl about how he had spoken or acted towards someone. I told him, just because you're sick doesn't give you the right to be mean. He needed me to be honest, open, and bold, because that's what true friends are. I loved Carl's family because they shared him with me, and I had great opportunities to help them also. It got too hard for Kathy, Carl's wife, to bring him to small group, so we moved small group to their house. When Carl was in the hospital, small group would go there. How awesome is that? By the way, I hope you're in a small group because it matters. A dying man told me that. I had the privilege of leading Carl to the Lord and baptizing him here at Rockbrook. I had the same privilege to do so with the third amigo, Bobby, who now attends Rockbrook. Carl was in the hospital at the time of Bobby's baptism, but he did ask me to hold Bobby under just a little longer to make sure that it took. Both of these friends accepted Christ during Carl's bout with cancer. Carl had tried other churches and even other religions, but said when he came to Rockbrook, he knew Christ was real. He traveled from Archie each week to be here, and laid on a cot in unbelievable pain, and would tell me, "Man, Kenny, that sure was good, and just what I needed." I told Carl everything that I knew about death, and everything that I knew about heaven. I told him to expect an angel escort to heaven, not because it sounded good, but because that's what the Bible says. Kathy called me on January 22nd of 2008 and said Carl was really restless and fighting to stay here. Bobby and I sat at Carl's bedside in his home, played guitar and sang. We told him goodbye, and I told Carl that Jesus was waiting and he could let go of this life. We left, and Carl's escort to heaven came 3.5 hours later. I no longer think that Carl and I met by chance.